Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the DLC Drop Podcast. Today it's my pleasure to welcome Jonathon Oudthone. He has an amazing story of how he grew up as a hardcore gamer, pursued competitive opportunities, and really focused on building community throughout his career. He ended up as the president of the Esports Stadium in Arlington. He's got an amazing story of how that came to life and his goals in the space. Let's talk to Jonathon. Drop in the untold stories of industry leaders, influencers, and insights on future innovation. I'm John Davidson, and this is the DLC Drop Podcast. All right, I'm excited about this episode with my good friend Jonathon Panda Odithone. Thank you so much for joining me today on the DLC Drop Podcast.
John, absolutely thrilled to be here. Appreciate it. Glad to finally be able to be on. It's been something that I've wanted to do for a while now. So, we connected in Vegas and you mentioned wanting to get me on. So I was super excited to jump at the opportunity.
Awesome. Appreciate you being here. So for the audience, a little background on how you and I got to know each other. I believe that was during my time at GameStop. And that was a time when the Esports Stadium in Arlington was being built, and you had the opportunity and the prestige of being the president of the Esports Stadium Arlington there. And I loved what you did there, seeing your leadership, seeing your many speeches on the stage, looking up at you and be like, I know that guy, he's my friend. But why don't you take us through this career path, and then let's dig into some of the very many things that you've learned in your time in esports.
Yeah, absolutely. Esports Stadium Arlington was definitely a pivotal moment for me in my career. Obviously it's the largest dedicated esports facility in North America, and there's, I couldn't even tell you, the ones that would be bigger than it outside of, China, just in the world as a whole. Right. So it was a huge moment. It was, the lead up of that facility, building, developing it, really the story from, the beginning of my career. It all, kind of fumbled up and furled up into the story of that facility. And, before I really dive into it, and I can go back, I can go really far back, and I think I should, but before I do that, I think it's important for everybody to kind of have their own personal mission in esports. Right. And when I jumped in, it was 2008, 2009. When I first jumped in, day one, when I realized that this is something that I wanted to do, that personal mission that I created was to build a foundation for growth. Right. So I think it's good to mention that, as it might actually set an undertone for, the narrative of the story here. But really, it goes back. I mean, as many of our stories here in esports start, we're all gamers at first, before we knew what it was going to be, what it was going to turn into, how we were going to be involved. We were all just gamers. For me as a kid, I remember, playing Mario, playing Sonic, and, my mom would have friends over, or, I'd have friends over. And the only thing I ever wanted to do was sit there and play video games, you know? And that's such a near and dear story for many in our industry. Right. And, to think back then as a kid, playing Sonic, trying to speed run through it, playing GoldenEye, playing Halo. I mean, I would go on camping trips and we'd bring power generators, and rather than enjoying the wilderness, I'm not even kidding. Me and my friends would be in a tent, playing GoldenEye. And to think about where it's gone from then to where it is now, even outside of my career, it's amazing. It's astonishing. So really it started for me, being a fan of StarCraft, early 2000s, playing that game like crazy. That was really my first foray into competitive gaming. Watching Slayer's Boxer go at it, Yellow, all of those greats back in the day. Just, I don't even remember, to be honest, I couldn't even remember back in the early 2000s, what platform I was watching their footage on. Was YouTube around then? Do you know?
I can't remember when YouTube started, so I'm not sure. I think there were a few websites that hosted some events. I don't think yet have YouTube. It definitely didn't have the traction and the viewership that it has today. But I think there were a few. I remember talking to Ben Nickel. Ben Nickel is an OG as well. With Red Bull. He's been with ESL, been with NGE. He's doing some other stuff now, but Yeah, I think they hosted a website where they were just streaming competitive gaming videos to that website rather than a dedicated app, if you will, like YouTube. The DLC Drop podcast is sponsored by Ice Shaker. I've been a huge fan of this brand for the past few years, ever since I met founder Chris Gronkowski. What I love about this product is the brand story, the functionality, and the customization. Ice Shaker is a Shark Tank company invested in by Mark Cuban and Alex Rodriguez, owned by NFL players Rob Gronkowski and Chris Gronkowski. I love using my Ice Shaker anytime I'm driving to the podcast studio, I'm going skateboarding, or I'm at the gym. No matter what I'm doing, it just does a great job of keeping my drinks hot or cold. The customization for Ice Shaker is something that's super unique. You can get any name, just about any logo engraved onto your Ice Shaker and delivered to you within just 3 to 5 business days. Get your own DLC Drop branded Ice Shaker at iceshaker.com/DLC Drop. Save 20% on all Ice Shaker products with the discount code DLC Drop.
Yeah, so weird. I mean, the internet back then was so different. You know, I had my 4x3 monitor and just huge lug rig and my 56K internet, and my mom would pick up the phone because, dude, my mom was such a chattermouth. You know, like that's like that. You know, today people are on their phones all the time, but my mom was literally on the phone nonstop. So it was the worst internet experience for me. But you know, she'd pick it off, I'd get knocked out. But anyways, I got a lot of my gaming done late at night, secretly, you know, when I'm supposed to be asleep. So, and I think that's why like StarCraft, you know, was so big for me, because, you know, I was able to kind of dive into this world of something that was happening in South Korea, you know, or Europe and other parts of the country. And I was blown away, you know, watching these guys go at it and play and compete. And I got really competitive myself, you know, playing ladders. You know, I did a little bit of custom match just to loosen it up a little bit. But StarCraft was really big for me. It was the first competitive game that I really dived into. I didn't know, though, about esports. I don't think that was even a term that I had ever heard in my entire life at that point in time, right? To me, this was just this thing that I like to do with my friends, and I like to watch matches, and I like to dive and dissect the game, you know, like what's my 2-minute in strategy on mining, building, and, you know, like managing my economy. It was so cool. So, you know, I was really big into that game, and, you know, nothing really happened to kind of move me forward into like this world of esports. But I think it's important to tell that, because that was like kind of that was something that was near and dear. And even today, like I still hold StarCraft very close to me. But it wasn't really until about 2009 that I got really involved with esports. And what I mean is like rolling my sleeves up, understanding that there's this entire industry and community that existed. And it was by sheer luck. I mean, it was crazy how this happened to me, because, you know, I walked into a GameStop one day, and there you go. GameStop.
Sounds familiar.
It is very familiar. And so I walked in and I was buying a PS3. You know, it was like my first PS3. I was like, all right, I'm gonna buy this, and I'll buy a bunch of games, you know. So I did your traditional couch games, you know, your Madden, you know, I bought your Call of Duty, I bought your FIFA, and I was like, I'm gonna play the heck out of these games. As I was checking out, I looked to my right, and there was a display stand, and I don't know the date off the top of my head, but it was literally the day that Street Fighter 4 had came out.
I'm a Street Fighter guy. That's my jam.
Yeah, cool. Well, we can dive into that, man, because that is also my jam. But I noticed that like, okay, hey, this game, Street Fighter 4, man, when I was a kid, I used to play Street Fighter 2 in the arcade with my dad. Like, I played this thing on Super Nintendo. So it was a super sick game. I'm going to pick it up, you know, because I just want to add to my game inventory. You know, I want to have a bunch of games that I can play. I want to be that guy. So I picked it up, bought it, and honestly, it sat there. I didn't really play it too much. But then I found out a couple of my buddies were actually playing. And so I kind of linked up with them, started playing. You know, I thought I was hot stuff at the time, playing against the computer, right? And then they came in and kicked my butt. But that like drove me to get better and better. So I hit it hard. I hit training hard. Like I started, researching combos and really trying to take myself from being this super big scrub to even less of a scrub. But then I started beating them. And, so this was a couple of months, of us just getting together and being really obsessed and playing this game. We'd go to each other's houses, play. But we had no idea that this game had a much bigger community, that like there was something else bigger happening with Street Fighter 4. And I had no idea at the time, but
where were you living at this time?
I was actually, here in Conway, Arkansas.
Yeah.
I was living here.
So this was kind of pre-social media or pre like social media really popping off in the way that we know it today. And so you probably didn't know much more than what was happening in your immediate neighborhood or your immediate town, right? You weren't seeing all these other things what people in Southeast Asia were doing with esports tournaments or anything else that was happening around the country.
No idea. And you're right. There was no, I think Facebook existed, but there was no real social media like pull, that really allowed you to discover, like the discovery tools in social media weren't there yet. So, but what we did find is SureYouCan.com. And if you don't know what I'm sure you do. It was the holy grail for finding communities, promoting tournaments, talking about, strategy frames, learning about the game. It was just the holy grail. It was forums. That's how we socialized back then, was through internet forums. So we found SureYouCan.com, and in SureYouCan.com, my buddies, Alan, Blake, they said, hey, there's this forum, right? There's this, this regionalized forum where you can go in and find people that are playing this game in your area. And so there was an Arkansas thread. So
who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
Walmart and Street Fighter.
Yeah, Walmart and Street Fighter, exactly. So there's this small, really tiny community of people. Some of them had been around, since the Third Strike days. I remember a guy named Warp to God, man. Like this guy he's an OG, and I still see him on Twitter every now and then, and he's still got, fighting game enthusiasts in his profile. So shout outs to that guy. But, there were those guys, and then there were the new blood that Street Fighter 4 brought in, so we introduced ourselves, and just so happened to meet a few folks on there. And we were like, hey, you know what? Let us host. So I invited 2 other guys over, and from there, it was me and my buddy Alan, my buddy Blake. We thought we were hot stuff, because we beat up on each other. We thought we had our combos down. We invited this, guy named Mike and Max over, and they played with us, and we were in my garage, and dude, they just steamrolled us. It was insane. Like we had no idea what the game was, but we uncovered this new version of the game that we'd been playing for months. And it was through like seeing them play against us. We had no idea that layer of like meta existed. But from there, like we were hooked, man. So right then and there, that was kind of that moment, where I felt like, I didn't think it was going to be as big as it was for me today, but, I knew that I wanted to do something in this space, like I wanted to build something. I wanted to build a community. Right. And that's that foundation, that foundation that I was building was getting people together to play games in a very neutral, positive environment where we learn, we compete, we're friends. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter, what your religion or what your job is. To be honest, I have no idea what anybody I've met in gaming really do, outside of the ones I've worked with. Yeah. But that moment right there is when I really learned that that's kind of what I wanted to do. Is I wanted to build some type of foundation. I just had no idea how big it was going to be. So, I think it's really important to kind of talk about that moment, because that was really a springboard for me moving forward kind of in this industry.
Yeah, I think that's amazing because you have a lot of vision there, right? Now a lot of people are saying, how do I get into esports, into this industry that is booming, that has all this infrastructure, that now has locally based teams, that is global? There's arenas, there's teams, there's leagues, there's agencies, there's all these different ways to get into it. But back then, it sounds like you had this vision to grow this community, but there was no infrastructure. You couldn't look beyond yourself and say, I want to do that, or I want to work for those people. It was, I want to do more of this with more people, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly, man. And, this is why I have a tremendous amount of respect for, some of the biggest names, in esports, the Nickel, Adam Apicella, Alex Jabali, Alex Faye. All of these guys have contributed so greatly to esports, but you see how successful they are right now. But also take a look at their beginnings. It was very humble. It really was from like the grassroots side, like on the grounds, like literally building and propping this industry up on their own, So as I sort of, as throughout my career, I learned a lot about these guys, and, I looked up to them for sure and what they were doing. And, but I really respect that nature of someone that really has that kind of ground up experience and what they're able to do, because it creates that authentic, a very authentic ground for growth. And I think that's important in our industry.
Yeah, I think a lot of people nowadays are either trying to get in it for money or notoriety, but the folks who got into it before there was any money or notoriety, and it was pure passion project, I think there's something here. I love doing this. I don't want to do anything else. That really tells you who that person is, what type of person they are, and you're one of those people. So take me past you getting this epiphany, if you will, wanting to build in esports. What was your next step?
Yeah, so from there, it was very organic, man. I took a completely different path than where I am today, actually. I really went all in on being a competitor. Like, I wanted to be pro. So regionally, I would travel, to all the southern states here, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Texas, Oklahoma. And I was competing in all these different regional tournaments. You're talking, taking a car down with 4 other guys, jam-packed, your fight sticks in your lap, your bags in the trunk. Yep. Then you're sharing a hotel room with 5 other people that also came down from Arkansas to go to some Dallas tournament. You're sleeping on a floor, drinking all night, hanging out, and just playing games, learning, money matching, going to your other guys' rooms. Like that was what I did for a good amount of time. And I got pretty good at the game, I'd win some majors, I'd get top 3. But, I never really crossed that layer of like being a pro. I could hang for sure, but I never, humbly so, I would say that I never went fully pro in that game, maybe more so semi-pro. I was definitely a threat in the bracket. Regional tournaments, I played is pretty high, but, to get to a major, I was just a threat in pools at that point. But again, I learned a lot, about that. And it is something that drove me, and I had a lot of passion in it, but I realized that like, this isn't my purpose, like, this isn't my purpose. I had a completely different career, working in tech. I was bartending on the side. And, what I really kind of latched on to was supporting the community, right? Like elevating and allowing the community to rise. When we would host our meetups, I realized that like, hey, look, you know what? Like, on the West Coast, those guys, at Level Up with, Alex Faye, they're streaming all their Wednesday night fights, and on the East Coast, man, you have Team Spooky doing his thing. Yeah. We don't really have anybody down here in the South that's showing off what we're doing, Right. So, man, I started investing into streaming equipment, got a webcam, got a computer that could do the encoding, and back then things like XSplit and OBS didn't actually exist, man. So it was a really rink-a-dink kind of setup, I was using a Hauppauge HD PVR as a capture device. I remember that thing had such crazy lag, from video to screen, that it wasn't really a great experience. I started with the Dazzle, all of that, Right. But I invested into a little bit of gear, did my little 360p stream, 30 frames, and started kind of spotlighting our community, all of our tournaments, all of our weeklies. And I wanted to build what they had on the West Coast. I wanted to build what they had on the East Coast. So I started streaming. from there, like I kind of took this weird path. Like I was like this local community streamer, but also I really wanted to be a good Street Fighter player. So I went online actually. So while doing all of this, I developed a brand called Panda X Gaming. And this brand, it blew up, and I became the home for Street Fighter 4 online, like tournaments, online matches, and everything. Wow. So you could literally, it was a 24/7 stream. I had this like vision that like I was going to build this kind of just network of nonstop content where people could join these open lobbies, compete against each other, train. And in the evenings we do exhibitions, we do tournaments. I did this for a few years, and it got huge. You could literally come to twitch.tv/PandaX Gaming at any moment and watch Street Fighter. And all it was me going through like 20 Xboxes, but having an Xbox hooked up to a capture card to my PC. And then I'd set up an open lobby so players can join. And then I just spectate those matches, but it was nonstop 24/7. I'd go off to work. This lobby was going, wow. People were playing, and I'm not going to say that I was the first to do that idea. There was a guy named Peaceful J, who kind of started this way back in the day. He actually passed the torch off to me, and he disappeared, but he kind of like mentored me for a little bit. Wow. I learned a lot about streaming, learned a lot about building communities from him. And it was funny, just the other day, I was going through some old Gmail text logs, and I came up on a conversation I had with him, and I just kind of refreshed my memory. I was like, whoa, I was so clueless back then,
Didn't know what you didn't know, I'm sure.
I didn't know what I didn't know, but I think that's something that we all have to do is to take a moment to understand that throughout your entire career, there's never a moment that you stop learning from others. You have to always be humble. But so I was building an online community, and the viewership was great. From there, I was still doing the thing on the side with streaming our locals here in Arkansas, and I got noticed by some of the bigger tournament organizers in Dallas, Texas. Mm-hmm. And they hired me to come out in, what was it? I think 2013, to stream the secondary stream, right? So I wasn't the primary broadcast, but I was the secondary broadcast, to do Tekken. To stream Tekken, and a lot of big name players from Korea. I had no idea who they were at the time, but now I do. Came over. JDCR was one of them, and it was a huge deal, apparently, I had all these huge big name Tekken players that were legends, they're like gods of Tekken, competing on my stream. So, I did that Friday, Saturday, knocked it out of the park. And that was like my first real gig, producing and directing kind of this stream. And they hired me back next year as the primary stream. And this was an event called Absolute Battle. So from there, my streaming career, producing broadcasts for tournaments and these bigger events kind of kicked off. And I stopped focusing on being a player and put more time into streaming. I was still doing the online stuff on the side. I'd even go out and travel and still have that stream up, and I would be, streaming these big tournaments on the side. But, I'd go to Oklahoma, I'd go to Texas, I'd go to Louisiana, do all these big streams. And throughout the years, it took me, 2009 to 2013, it took me 4 years to even get my first paycheck in the industry. And by that time I had invested so much time, so much money, into procuring equipment. But to me, it was I was passionate about what I was doing. I was serving what I thought my purpose was, building that foundation for growth. So I would say my first big break into esports was in 2015. I got called up by a good friend of mine, Chris Seglia, from Tenno Productions. Mm-hmm. And he said, hey, I've seen your work. I've seen and I have the email, man, I could probably read it verbatim, but it went along the lines of, I've seen your work and I like what I see. We want to bring you out to Las Vegas to produce and direct one of our streams. So I was like, no way, Las Vegas. Evo. You mean Evo? Yeah. Like, so it was Evo, it was Evolution, you know, the largest fighting game tournament in the world. I'm some small town guy in the South, you know, that just, all I wanted to do was build a platform for, you know, our community in the South to be seen, you know, and I started doing that. I started accomplishing it, giving us recognition. And now I'm stepping up to plate, being asked to direct a broadcast in Las Vegas for Evolution. So that was mind-boggling.
That's amazing. Wow.
And, you know, the game, which is funny because I was never a Tekken player, man, but I don't know why Tekken always just like Tekken just lured me in, and it gave me the biggest opportunities in the space.
Yeah.
But it was right before Tekken 7 came out. It was the very first Evo Tekken tournament. Actually, Ben and Namco had the game there at Evo, and they kind of did like a pre-launch tournament. And I streamed it, you know, so I produced, directed the broadcast. It was super sweet. It was awesome. From there, man, I went off and, you know, I was working with Tenno as kind of a side contractor. You know, I did a lot of stuff for Capcom Pro Tour, the Injustice Pro Series when that was around. You know, I worked with CEO, I worked with Combo Breaker, DreamHack even. And man, I just started traveling a ton, you know, picking up all these gigs, doing my thing. But, you know, and I kind of skipped an important step here, but on the side, you know, I was like, okay, I'm doing this thing online. I'm doing the streaming stuff, but you know, when I come home, what can I do here? I started running tournaments. You know, so I started, you know, organizing and running tournaments through, you know, getting out to Dallas, learning how they're doing things, you know, getting out to Oklahoma, getting out to Vegas, just seeing, you know, tricks of the trade, learning, absorbing, and just being a sponge to information. I started running my own tournaments here, you know, went from literally the garage to, I went to music halls, you know, like music venues. I went to hotel ballrooms, game stores, you know, just kind of like as things were getting bigger, like kind of the venue was evolving, the venue was changing, you know? So I was doing the streaming thing. The online lobbies kind of just started to slowly, like I didn't have time for it. You know, I was running my own tournaments. You know, I was doing the streaming thing. I got picked up by a group called Kumite Gaming. They brought me on as an owner to their tournament organization group. They were based out of Tennessee. So I worked with them. KIT is this huge major tournament in the South. And I worked with them as the, you know, kind of a broadcast and community outreach partner. So help build that brand. And from there, man, I was just kind of doing my thing, you know, 2015, 16, 17, Evo. Like I came back every year, directed a different thing. I think the first year was Tekken. The second year it was Smash Ultimate. And then the third year was Tekken again, interestingly enough. And, you know, so I was just doing this thing, man. I was growing these tournaments. I was streaming things. I was bringing spotlight to stuff. I created this exhibition series called Ultra Fight Night. So when I would go out to absolute battles or, you know, your big majors, like it was kind of this brand, like the UFC, you know, it's fight card style. Like I didn't mention this about myself, but I have a huge martial arts background. I did a lot of MMA, cool. Thai boxing way back in the day. So I kind of had that always in the back of my head. Like I wanted to create something similar to that. So I created something called UFN Ultra Fight Night. And at every major tournament that I would stream, I would put together a fight card of like 10 different people. So there'd be like 5 matches, you know, your undercard, your co-main event, your main event. And at, you know, Saturday night, this was the marquee main event, you know, so it was great. It was huge. Like people came to love and they were excited to watch it. But, you know, I was doing my thing over the years, working with lots of people. I'm sure, you know, Markel Lee with AOE Creative. Yeah. He was a big influential figure in my life and especially my career. You know, I was working with him a lot on Absolute Battle, and then him and I actually just became really integrated partners. Like we were like best buds back then. You know, so his graphic design skill, you know, his work ethic, and then kind of me producing tournaments and broadcasts, like it made for a really good collaboration and partnership. But he had introduced me, I think it was absolute battle in 2016 in Dallas to a guy named Chris Chaney. I shook this guy's hand, didn't know much about him. Shook his hand and, took the time to talk with him. And again, it's super important to build relationships,
Yes.
So shake every hand you can, hear every story you can, because you never know what it could turn into. Right. And that was one of those moments. Markel, tells me, he's like, this guy's the real deal, man. This guy has a vision. He's got the connections to make some things happen. And, I'd been burned a couple of times in esports, up to that point. And so I was very wary, and I was also like, I'm happy with my growth, I'm happy with what I'm doing. And I don't think I had committed yet, that this could be a career option for me. This was kind of something I was doing on the side still up until that point. But, he brought a couple of people into the table, started talking more with Chris, hearing about his vision and, the contacts that he had and the partners that he had from an investment perspective. And to me, it was just like, this is way too good to be true. Wow. They wanted me to come in basically and to build their entire event vertical, their broadcasting vertical, all of that, doing what I basically have been doing for years, but at a level that is funded, that was, that was new to me, you need funding, we're not working on shoestring budgets, and I think that discipline also carried with me because I wasn't a big money. I didn't like spending money, being very, very, very frugal with my dollars. So, but, that investment group ended up being, some were silent partners, but the known partners were the Texas Rangers ownership group.
Yes.
Chris's vision was to build infinite esports in entertainment. And under that, many subsidiaries led by industry experts, right, would do their thing. So Markel was like, all right, man, you've got to be in this. You're the perfect person to do this. He believed in me. I actually didn't believe in myself, man. And it got to the point to where the writing was on the wall. This thing was going to happen, but I psyched myself out. I was like, there's just no way this is going to happen. It's too good to be true. And I said, Markel, I can't put my time into this, I'm going to back out. So I backed out.
Wow.
I was going to continue doing my thing. And I was just like, I want to focus on my family. I want to focus on my current career. This is a lot, and I don't know if this, I didn't believe it at the time. And I look back and I was so foolish, but, it was a few weeks later, Markel reached back out to me and he said, I'm not going to let you back out of this.
Wow. That's a good friend.
Very good friend. Could have left me in the dirt, in the dust and, went off and did his thing. Really that moment right there, man, I decided, okay, I'm going to do it. You believe in me, I'll believe in myself. Let's do it. So my job within all of this was to be the president of Engage Esports, which was the events vertical for Infinite Esports Entertainment. So we built a business model, built a pro forma for the business, and kind of just started working on building, our clientele base. And throughout that first year, we did a lot of great stuff. We built the events vertical for the Houston Outlaws. We did some awesome events for Optic Gaming, including Optic Arena, which was this huge, crazy event that we partnered with Akon on.
Yes, I want to dig into that a little bit. That was incredible. Yeah. That's something that I'm really interested in, and the reason is, it's more entertainment than competition, right? And so you have this unique thing in esports where it's digital, it's not physical. And so you can get a lot more creative with whatever the setup is or the technology in the area rather than having to be around a field or a court or something like that. And I loved how you guys really, pushed the creativity there by having an event that, yes, included competition, but was very entertainment focused.
Yeah. Let me dive into that. That was an awesome event, and we wanted to shift away from it being a competitive type tone, that, I mean, it did have a competitive nature to it. We did a couple of fighting games on the side, Smash and all that. And it was very successful. Those events on their own, but really the crux of it was we wanted to create something that celebrated the people that have been a part of Optic, the big names, the players, the influencers, right? Yeah. That allowed them to connect with their fans outside of the competitive environment, So what we did is, we got all of the influencers buy-in. We had a stage that they could literally sit there and stream and play games on, and an audience can watch. There's this huge LED wall, this big stage. On the other side of that stage was kind of another zone. And this was when Fortnite was like blowing up. It was crazy. Yeah. Ninja had just gotten huge. We actually tried to get Ninja to come out for that event, but by that time he was so big that like, he was just like, I've got other things I'm working on. But I'm glad we had the opportunity to work with all the Optic influencers, because they showed up, they did their thing, they interacted with the fans. But we worked with Epic Games on that actually. And it was the first time, this was before the Fortnite World Cup. It was the first time that they had allowed, that they essentially would allow a third party to do an event that big. So they flew out themselves just to see how everything would go, because they were trying to learn like, well, how does our game work in kind of this open LAN environments? So we learned a lot from them. I would like to say they learned a lot from us as well. But the concept was that all the Optic players, the influencers we had 4 stations, that was like on this raised platform. It looked like, it was this kind of wooden built deck, much like in Fortnite. And then on the pit surrounding them was just this sea of PCs that, basically any fan, we had a huge line. Any fan could come in and play with those influencers on stage. So they would drop into the same lobby with them, so
that's cool.
That was a massive undertaking, to be able to pull that off, but we got it streamlined. It was so smooth. It was fluid. Everybody had a great time. The influencers had a great time. They got their shining moment. They got to meet with the fans. There's a kid actually that came, his name is Bartnologist. And now he's a big name streamer, like kind of pro battle royale player. I remember meeting that kid there, and, he was giving all the pro players a run for their money. And I was just like, man, that kid is really good. He's going to be great one day. And now he's just, look him up. He's this big time streamer. He's still young, but he's really great. So that event was awesome. It was, as you said, kind of taking that competitive light away and really bringing in this recreational fun environment where the fans could interact with Optic in a way they've never been able to before. So that event was awesome. We executed a lot of events like that. Some were white label things. We worked with professional sports teams to do things. We worked with Overwatch League teams. We worked with tournament organizers to do things. So that whole year was super busy. That was kind of our launching pad. But in the background, there was something else brewing, and that was Esports Stadium Arlington. Yeah. And so the conversation, I remember getting hit up by Neil Lehman. I was in Arkansas because I had moved to Texas at that point. Mm-hmm. And I was traveling on weekends to be with my kids back here in Arkansas because, my ex-wife lives here. So I remember being here on the weekends, and I get a call from Neil Liebman, and he says, if you don't know who Neil Liebman is, he's co-owner of the Texas Rangers. He calls me and says, hey, I want to build an esports arena, and we're going to get the city to partner on it. And I said, okay, perfect. He said, can you be here to meet with an architect Monday? So I was like, I'm there, so I'll be back in town. So I met with Chris Chaney. I met with Brian Marakian from Populous. I don't even remember the restaurant. It was somewhere in Dallas. It was just like some random cold day. And we had a conversation, kind of laid out this idea, this vision. Populous had really been, brainstorming and envisioning what an esports facility could look like for the longest time. So we had a conversation. We were like, okay, let's move this forward. Right. From that point, I really drove in and took lead, and started working with the city of Arlington and Populace to kind of curate this idea. I remember drawing down the pro forma, like, well, how does the financials, like what type of revenue, how do we make money in this facility? Right. What are our expenses? What are our costs? I had no idea what the facility was going to be at that point. There was this idea that we could take some of the properties in Arlington and retrofit them to be an esports facility. And the number one prospect was the Arlington Convention Center. So I remember meeting with, Neil Ray Davis, the city of Arlington, Trey Yelverton, and the mayor, and we walked through, the existing at the time, the existing convention center staff, Mike Hunter, Justin Grinsley. We walked through and just kind of looked at the bones of the facility. It was this older convention center that. It was definitely past its prime. I think it was built in like the 60s or something like that.
Yeah, it's an older building. Yeah.
Yeah. If you go there now, you can still see, how old it is just by being on the expo side, because it's, one half is an expo center, the other half is esports stadium. But even then, that half that exists now was built like in the 90s or early 2000s. So, so even that still looks dated. Just imagine what the other side of it looked like that we built over, you know, I mean, it was a beautiful facility, but, Arlington had a vision and they did a study sometime in 2017, about esports. They wanted to learn about this new fast emerging industry. They're a sports entertainment district, right? So this was something that really intrigued them. They knew that they had to be involved. They had to be a part of that growth. And the city of Arlington, they were such great partners. Their vision aligned exactly with what we wanted to do and how we wanted to build it. So from there, we looked at it and we said, look, I kind of got in, I said, this would be great to have a stage here. This kind of foyer area, this gallery, like we could turn this into a day-to-day business model where people could come in and do something when a big event's not happening. This area where we have storage behind the ballroom, like this could be our production facility. It could be the heart. It's like in the middle, and then in the back area, you had all your meeting room spaces. And I said, well, this could be your team rooms, your player lounges, your space where, when a big tournament organizer comes in, that they can do catering and all this, so like first pass, man, like it was not too far off from where we ended up being. I think we ended up moving the stage from like dead center when you walk into the left side of the facility due to power access and, other things like seating, but, from what it started out on that first pass, it's kind of crazy. It ended up being very similar to what the end product was. So we spent, and I think it was January of 2018 is the first time I met with the city. And we sat down, they were like, we want to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to put in X millions of dollars, and we're committed. We're going to do this. In their mind, they were going to build a new convention center later down the road anyway. So they needed to find something for this old piece of infrastructure. Yeah. Right. So like they would put some money in. We would come in and put the operational cost of operating the business in. Right. That was our part. So we signed an agreement with them. They at the end of the day, they ended up investing around $10.6 million into the project. And, that got us our renovation of the facility. That got us all the technology, the 90-foot LED wall, the stage, all of that, and we came in and obviously we as the operating co ended up, bringing in all the PCs, the consoles, the gaming equipment, right. And also we covered the overhead for the staff. But from there, from January 2018 to sitting down with the city to November 19th, I want to say that's how long it took us to build Esports Stadium Arlington, from an idea at a table to opening our doors November 19th. That's how long it took. That was one of the most stressful, but like, it was like, man, that year, like it was stressful all the same, but like I was just so hyped. I was so energized. I was so excited for what we were doing, so we were building We were building a business model as we were building a facility. And throughout all of that, when we opened our doors, our first event was ECS season 6, which is a Face It event.
Yeah,
So
I was at that one. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So that was huge, but man, the story behind getting that event, getting them to relocate from Europe to the US, in that it was like perfect timing. Simon Bennett, another good friend who's also with AOE Creative, got me connected with the group over at Face It. And we explored like, hey, we're building this arena. They were like, no, you're not. No, you're not. It's not happening. But no, we really are. Like, we've got, here's the investment we're getting. This is, we're already started on this.
Yeah.
So we were working with them. Now a good friend of mine, Ben Aykroyd, who took lead on their side, worked with me to, and they were, as they should have, they were super hesitant to commit. I don't think we got a contract down until October, and then the event was November itself. But they were super hesitant, because like who does this? Who goes out and, retrofits a 100,000 square foot facility and turns it into the largest dedicated esports facility in the country? Like nobody does that. You got to be crazy.
Right.
But we got that event booked, and like, it was like the city wanted to open at a certain time. There was this deadline we had to hit, and we had to open with a big event. So I was just like scrambling to find what is this big event. And luckily Face It was willing to bring ECS season 6, which was great because they brought, some of the biggest teams, Cloud9, Team Liquid, Astralis, Ninjas in Pajamas, and it was huge. We sold out, opened our doors, and I'm not kidding you. Leading up, even while we were broadcasting, we still had people in the back patching things up, still getting things ready, that week leading into ECS, I didn't sleep, and the months leading into ECS, I didn't sleep because I'm trying to work with, a team that's based in London, and
that
time difference is insane. I'm designing a facility at the same time. I'm running Engage on the side as well. But we ended up getting the contract to the city, making it happen. We opened our doors at the end of November. Thanksgiving weekend actually is when we opened. And to a sold out crowd, we broke, Face It broke YouTube viewership records for CSGO. It was the press. I'd done so many interviews, I had met with media, it was insane, wow. That the city's partnership throughout all of that, Populus's partnership. It was such a humbling and amazing experience to be a part of that. But also very stressful because there was so much happening out that entire year, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without, my team. I brought Corey Dunn on, and that was an interesting story in itself. I hit Corey up on LinkedIn because I was just trying to find rock stars, I wanted nothing less than rock stars to join our team.
Right.
I heard that this guy named Corey Dunn was living in Fort Worth, and he was a legend in the space. So I hit him up on LinkedIn. He ghosted me for 3 months, and I guess he saw
come on, Corey, what are you doing?
Yeah, he saw the announcement for ESA come out, so he was like, you know what, that guy reached out to me. So he got back to me, and it was so crazy. I was like, yeah, I want to hire you. Corey was like, man, I've got this career, I'm already doing really well. I stepped away from esports, everybody's been trying to hire me, and I told him no. And I was like, well, what does it take? And so I told Corey my vision, told him what we were doing, walked him through the facility, and he accepted the offer. And I'm not kidding. Within 3 weeks, he was on my team, and that dude contributed so greatly to the design of the facility as well. And Corey is an absolute rock star, an amazing leader. I learned a lot from Corey and really value the time that I had to work with him. But it was really the team that helped prop the stadium up. I was just kind of guiding the vision and making sure that it happened. We opened, and that first year was insane. I mean, it was absolutely insane. I can't even describe how many big events we brought, how much stuff we did, how many people we had through the facility, the millions of dollars in revenue we made. It was an amazing year. That was 2019. We we negotiated and brokered a deal with the Esports Awards to bring them from London. Shout outs to Kim.
I was just there. I was just there for the Esports Awards.
Yeah, that was their third year on contract. So I remember inking that deal down with them. Somehow convinced them to come from London to the US, where they're literally operating out of London. They'd never done their show or done any work. And somehow we got a 3-year deal with them. And when I inked that deal down, like I was like, to me, that was just like, all right, man, this is huge. We got CRL, which is the Collegiate Rocket League National Finals with Psyonix before they sold to Epic. We worked with them for the first 2 years that I was there with the stadium. We did the Madden Classic with EA, which was the largest Madden LAN event that they had ever done. It was actually insane, like that. Like they, cut it up and put a lot of the broadcasts on national TV. They did a big live stream. That was insane. Various other huge events. We worked with ESL for Guns of Boom. We did the very first homestand for Overwatch League. And then the pandemic hit. Boom. And I think that's a mute point for a lot of conversations. We all know how that kind of impacted and affected the events industry. I think it was, we started seeing it towards the end of 2019, like we weren't really concerned. We were knees deep in getting ready to host the Gears North America major. We were knees deep in getting ready to host the very first Apex major that was ever supposed to happen. That was supposed to be in Arlington, Texas. Like that was going to be crazy. We had like multiple stage designs done that we were working with PGL and EA on. That event was supposed to be nuts, and we were super excited about it, but we started seeing the impact that kind of COVID was happening. And I remember March 13th when the whole world just shut down, It
was right before the Miami Overwatch League homestand, because I remember on the 14th I canceled. I think that was either the 14th or the 15th. But yeah, I canceled the tickets, canceled the hotel in Miami, and for a year and a half did not get on a plane.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I remember when it happened, we were just sitting in our office and, we were monitoring it, and then it was just like that, we sent everybody home, just said, hey, let's, I think it was a Thursday, send everybody home. Hey, let's just take an extended weekend. Let's see how things shape out, take care of yourself, be safe. We didn't see each other in an office for, I think it was like 6 months, we had that was the last time we would see each other in person, because back then it was serious. It was really, and it's still serious. We just have a different,
but we had no data. We had no idea how deadly this was. There was obviously no treatments or vaccines that were approved or known to exist. And it was just a lot of unknown.
So much unknown. We thought we were going to be back in office in a week, we thought we were going to still host, the Apex major. And it got pushed back. Multiple events kept getting pushed back. And, we just started seeing how serious it was, man. And being in an event venue and having to deal with COVID, it was unreal. It was unreal. We had contracts getting canceled left and right. Wow. As they should, businesses they were trying to get their deposits back, and it started to impact us financially very heavily, having to deal with that throughout the entire time, having to keep our employees. We wanted to keep our employees, and we started seeing companies just letting people go en masse, and we said, we're not going to do that. We were talking with our board every day about our financial situation. And when you go from having a super successful first year of business, to literally diving into a pandemic as the largest dedicated esports facility in the country that has so much to prove and so much potential, and so much momentum to build off of, to then just going right into a pandemic. it was the most stressful experience in my entire life. We went full remote. I remember having to shut the venue down, and we were super cautious about having to let people in, and like who would go do this, who would go do that. It was really tough. And then restrictions started to ease a little bit. I just remember being at home, not even leaving. I was afraid to leave my house. Like I was afraid to go to, I thought it was a ghost town in the world,
Sure.
and it kind of was.
Yeah.
But I remember kind of restrictions starting to ease a little bit, and they started to let some businesses open up. We still could not open to the public. We still could not host physical events because of the classification of our business. But what we could do is we could use our production facility, right? We could be a media studio. We could exist, but we still had to follow certain rules. So what we started to shift our focus to is because we were burning money trying to keep our employees. When you've never been through a pandemic before, you have no idea how long it's going to last. You don't know how long you have to wait this out. So our idea was like, okay, maybe a month, a month turns to 2 months, 2 months turns to 3. And we're like, okay, we're still carrying this overhead. We're trying everything we can to make money, but we can't. So we shifted to kind of this remote broadcasting type thing. We started doing our own content. There were a lot of businesses and companies and agencies that needed a lot of, white label broadcasting done, because the whole world shifted to online. Tournaments started being online. So we just started doing a lot of stuff online. And we started bringing revenue in, which was crazy. It wasn't what we needed, but we started to kind of, we were spending so much, but we started to do this a little bit.
Right.
And our number one priority was taking care of the people that had been there to build it. We did everything we could, and, at some point we had to make, some cuts, unfortunately. We tried everything we can to bring more revenues up, and we started getting into 2019 or 2020 Q4. And believe it or not, we were actually we were close to becoming break even at that point. Right. So we were like, okay, yeah, into 2020, we're getting break even. We're bringing in enough money. We're paying our bills. We're paying our staff. We're keeping jobs. And then, we were thinking that the world was going to come back online. And early 2021, we were just listening to the publishers. We were listening to the tournament. Like nobody had any clue what was going to happen, when things would come back. But we were just like, okay, we think Q1 2021. Little did we know, man, it was just this thing dragged on for so long. And I think we're just now getting to the point where we're recovering from it. You're seeing LAN events happening and coming back, and it's crazy and it's weird all in the same. When I was in Philadelphia, with Nerd Street opening, their flagship local host venue, seeing that many people in a confined space, it was weird. It was weird, but it felt great all in the same, because I had been this kind of social, just turtle sitting in, working remotely with my team for a year. And now we're all in this huge environment, opening our flagship venue that we've been working towards. And, we're back at it. People are back to playing, and now we're all a little more cautious. We all wear a mask, but
Sure.
We're now getting back into it. But back then, man, we had no idea, And then, there was this unfortunate thing that happened. And I'm sure you heard about it, but the entire staff at ESA was let go, myself included, and new leadership was put into place.
Right.
And there's a whole story to that, we could dive into, and it would take another hour. And I've actually never told that story publicly. But it's an interesting story of how it all happened. It's a story of nepotism. It's a story of greed and, lack of understanding and personal opinions. And
Sure.
It unfortunately impacted an entire team of professionals that were really good at what they were doing. That had so much potential that just needed a little bit more time to make it happen.
What I would love to dig into real quick here, we're near the end of wrapping up this episode. And so what I would love to have you share is, what was the number one thing that you learned during your time at that stadium, whether that was that first year when you were building this to become a viable business, or maybe that was, during that high stress moment time through COVID. What was something that your biggest takeaway?
Man, my biggest takeaway was how important people are. How important people are to the success of your vision, what you want to create, how important they are to your own success, and how important you are to theirs, right? My biggest takeaway was becoming a better leader. And I still, even today, have a lot of work to do. I don't think we ever reach our max potential of leadership. Sure. I think good leadership comes from listening and learning and taking what others are good at and empowering those skills, empowering them to be successful, to make their own decisions, to be very action oriented, but also you being able to hold them accountable to ensure that vision is intact and that you're listening to them as well, that you're growing, you're developing. People, it's very important. It's not even on the operational side. It's also on the community side, being authentic to your community, means that they're going to come back and they're going to pay, it's going to pay dividends to you and your business. You have to authentically build a home, a place for them to call, their local arcade, their local game store, and right. When you host the big events, that you're still paying tribute to them, but you're paying tribute to an even larger amount of fans, but we're not just FGC, we're not just FPS, we're everything esports, we're growing and rising with the tide together. So whether it's working with people within our organization, working with the community, working with partners externally, one thing that I've always tried to do is give as many opportunities for partners within my network to thrive, to have a piece of the pie, what we're doing, to be a part of that growth, because they're always going to come back and repay that to you, right? Like loyalty, trust, inclusiveness is very important in our industry. So, I know it's cliche, but people and the importance of those people in your life and how they help you shape and mold your vision is one of the most important things I've learned throughout that journey.
I love that. I had a very inspirational moment years ago. I worked for a tax firm, and it was what showed me an office job could be a positive experience, and it encouraged me to go back to school for my marketing degree. And what the CEO of that company said was, John, it's all about the people. We spend more time with the people we work with than our families a lot of times. And at the end of the day, it's how you treat each other. It's who you can rely on. And just great people who have each other's backs. And I've really kept that in mind through I think that was about 15 years ago. And so through my journey, in the back of my mind, is that what's more important than what you do even is who you work with. And it sounds like you've discovered that as well through your journey.
100%. And, never close that door for learning, right? For expanding your knowledge of what you're doing, expanding your relationships, and shake every hand and hear that person's story, because this industry is still so small and has so much room to grow. And you never know when the next Chris Chaney is going to walk into your life and completely change opportunities for you and many within your network.
I love that. Well, we need to have you back a second time to dig a little bit deeper into more of the story, more of the insights, more of the learnings. But man, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here. And, I'm just glad I get to kind of preach the word of what I've done and my vision and my mission here. So hopefully it was a good learning experience.
Absolutely. It's super inspiring to me, and I know to so many others. Before we wrap up, how can people get in touch with you? How can they follow you as you continue your journey?
Yeah, so I think Twitter is a really good place, at SolidXpanda. You could also find me on LinkedIn, pretty responsive there. So Jonathon Oudthone on LinkedIn. Those are really two good places. And from there, you can get my email address, my phone number, whatever you need.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you, Jonathon, for joining me today on the DLC Drop Podcast.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to the DLC Drop Podcast. This podcast is part of the Esports Futuri Podcast Network and produced by Innovation Media Enterprises. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave us a review.